Marcello's Italian restaurant was a world of warm golden lights, polished marble floors, and velvet curtains that hushed the outside world. The air was heavy with the scent of garlic butter, basil, and roasted tomatoes simmering in sauces behind the kitchen doors. Soft jazz floated from a piano in the corner, mingling with the quiet clinking of wine glasses and murmurs of couples leaning close across linen-covered tables. This was the place Kendra had been begging to try for months, the restaurant she'd circled in magazines and pointed out every time they drove past downtown. Tonight was supposed to be special. 5 years together. Evan sat stiffly across from her, smoothing the new suit he'd bought for the occasion. His palms were sweaty, but not from nerves about the dinner. No, it was a small black box in his jacket pocket that had burned against his chest all evening. He'd imagined this moment for weeks, the ring glittering under candlelight, Kendra's hand trembling as she whispered yes, the entire restaurant clapping when he slid the band onto her finger. He had imagined every detail. But reality wasn't following the script. Kendra, dressed in a sapphire blue dress that hugged her perfectly and drew the eyes of half the room, was distracted. Her phone buzzed on a white tablecloth, and when she glanced at the screen, she smirked. Not the soft, playful smirk Evan had fallen in love with years ago, but sharp, almost cruel curl of her lip. She looked back at him, eyes gleaming with something unfamiliar, contempt. "You know what, Evan?" she said suddenly, her voice cutting to the hum of conversation like shattered glass. Evan froze, his wine glass halfway to his lips. "What?" "I'm done pretending." The couple at the table beside them looked over, their forks pausing midair. The piano faltered for half a beat before resuming. Evan set the glass down carefully. "Pretending what?" Kendra leaned back in her chair and laughed. Not a warm laugh, not even an awkward one. It was sharp, cruel, the laugh of the queen bee from a high school hallway. "Everything. This whole relationship. It's a joke. You're a joke." Heat rushed up Evan's neck. He could feel eyes on them now. Forks stilled, conversation silenced. "Kendra, what are you talking about?" 5 years, she said, tossing her hair back. 5 years of the most boring, mediocre relationship in my life. You think you're such a good boyfriend, such a provider? What do you make 65 grand? Fixing computers? She scoffed. I'm a systems architect. I make 95. But whatever, you're still pathetic. The waiter carrying their entrees froze mid-step. A couple across the room lowered their menus to watch. You know who isn't pathetic? Kendra asked, her voice growing louder, sharper. She leaned forward, ensuring the whole restaurant could hear. Dimitri, my real boyfriend, the one I've been seeing for 2 years. He owns 3 gyms, drives a Maserati, and unlike you, she smirked again, venom dripping from every syllable, he can actually satisfy a woman. I faked every single time with you. Every moan, every "oh, baby," every "that was amazing." All fake. You're that bad. The words landed like daggers. Evan's stomach twisted, his skin hot and cold at once. The room had gone completely silent, except for the steady hum of the kitchen fan. The waiter holding their food looked from Evan to Kendra, unsure whether to set the plates down or retreat. Evan, though, didn't yell, didn't argue. He reached into his pocket, not for the ring, but for his phone. Calmly, deliberately, he tapped a few buttons, then looked Kendra in the eye. His voice was level. That's really interesting timing. She frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Check your bank app. Kendra rolled her eyes dramatically, but pulled out her phone. She swiped her screen, still smirking. And then her face changed. The smirk vanished. Her eyes widened. Her jaw slackened. What did you do? Evan set his phone on the table. I removed you from my accounts. Just now, while you were talking. The blood drained from her face. You can't do that. That's financial abuse. That's my money too. Actually, Evan said calmly, though his voice shook with adrenaline, it's not. You were just an authorized user. Past tense. Kendra's chair screeched backward as she stood, so fast it toppled behind her. Every head in the restaurant turned. You can't do this. You thief. You pathetic, spineless. Her shriek was so sharp the manager appeared instantly, eyes wide, hands raised in caution. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to calm down." "Calm down," she screamed, her voice echoing against the marble walls. "This piece of trash just stole thousands from me." The restaurant staff froze. Couples whispered. Evan sat perfectly still, watching her unravel. And then she snapped. She grabbed her wine glass, hand trembling. Evan thought for one terrifying second that she'd throw it at him. But instead, she hurled it at the manager, wine exploding across his crisp white shirt. The crash of glass against tile was deafening. 2 security guards, huge men built like refrigerators, stormed in from the lobby. In seconds, they had her arms pinned. She kicked and screamed, her dress slipping off one shoulder, her voice breaking as she thrashed. "You'll pay for this, Evan. Dimitri is going to destroy you. You're nothing. Do you hear me? Nothing." The guards hauled her toward the door, her shrieks fading into the night air outside. For a long moment, silence reigned. Then Evan picked up his wine glass. "To 5 years of fake orgasms, apparently," he said dryly. A single clap broke out from somewhere in the back. Then another. Soon the entire restaurant was applauding, forks tapping against glasses, laughter breaking through the tension. The manager, still dripping wine, approached Evan with a weary smile. "Sir, your dinner is on the house. And would you like me to call the police? We have cameras." Evan shook his head slowly. "Nah, but save the footage. Might need it later." When the entrees arrived, 2 plates of steaming pasta glistening under Parmesan. Evan ate both, and they were excellent. The morning sunlight filtered weakly through the blinds of Evan's apartment, cutting pale stripes across his unmade bed. He hadn't slept much, his mind replaying Kendra's public meltdown over and over like a bad movie. He couldn't switch off. Every detail. The venom in her laugh, the wine dripping down the manager's shirt, the stunned silence of the restaurant, lingered like smoke after a fire. The sharp buzz of his phone jolted him. Then another. Then another. He rolled over, squinting at the screen. 73 unread text messages. 31 missed calls. His stomach sank. The messages were a storm. Desperation one moment, venom the next. "Baby, please talk to me. I was drunk. I didn't mean it. That wasn't me talking. You know I have anxiety about money. You're a thief. This is illegal. Dimitri is coming for you. You're dead. Please, I'm sorry. I'll sue you for everything. I have nowhere to go. You're the worst thing that ever happened to me. Give me back access, or I'll ruin your life." Evan dropped the phone onto the sheets, staring at the ceiling. He wasn't shocked. He'd expected this. But the sheer intensity, the speed of her unraveling, left him uneasy. And then came the noise. A chorus of male voices outside his window. Shouts. Laughter. The kind of forced bravado that came from men who lived in gyms and mirrors. Evan dragged himself to the window and pulled back the blinds. Across the street stood 4 men in matching gym gear, broad shoulders puffed out, sunglasses even in the morning sun. At the center, grinning like a villain in a bad reality show, was Dimitri. Bronze skin, perfectly trimmed beard, his arms folded across a designer tracksuit that probably cost more than Evan's monthly rent. They looked ridiculous, like they were auditioning for Jersey Shore, the next generation. But ridiculous could still be dangerous. Evan's phone buzzed again. This time it was building security. "Mr. Patterson, some gentlemen are trying to gain access. They say they're here for you." Evan peeked through the blinds again. Sure enough, the group was clustered around Gerald, the 68-year-old security guard. Gerald was a retired cop with a beer belly and a stubborn streak, the kind of man who'd seen too much to care anymore. He leaned casually against the lobby desk, chewing a sandwich like he had all the time in the world. Dimitri gestured aggressively, pointing at the building, his voice raised. "This man stole from my girlfriend thousands of dollars. We want justice." Gerald didn't even look up from his sandwich. "Sir, this is private property. Move along." "You don't understand," Dimitri barked. "He's a thief. He ruined her life." Gerald finally looked up, deadpan. "And I don't care. Move along." Evan couldn't help it. He laughed out loud. The absurdity of watching a pumped-up fitness influencer get stonewalled by a half-retired cop eating a ham sandwich was almost enough to ease the tension in his chest. The men didn't move, though. They sat up across the street, arms folded, glaring up at Evan's window like wannabe mobsters in a bad crime flick. Evan sighed, opened his food delivery app, and ordered a large pizza. When the delivery driver arrived 20 minutes later, he directed him across the street. The men opened the box to find pepperoni slices steaming hot, and a note, "Thanks for keeping watch." Dimitri's face darkened as his buddies tried not to laugh. They lingered a while longer, but the pizza seemed to deflate their mission. Eventually, they dispersed, grumbling. But the real storm came hours later. At 2 p.m., Evan's phone rang again. The name on the screen made him hesitate. Diane, Kendra's mom. Diane was a kind woman, one of the few parts of Kendra's family Evan had truly liked. She'd always welcomed him at holidays, slipping him extra slices of pie, telling him he was good for Kendra. His throat tightened as he answered. "Evan, honey." Diane's voice was shaky, panicked. "What happened?" "Kendra is hysterical. She says you abandoned her at a restaurant and stole all her money." Evan sat at his desk, staring at the clutter of unopened mail. He took a slow breath. "Did she tell you about Dimitri?" Silence. Then a cautious, "Who?" "Her other boyfriend. The one she's been seeing for 2 years." The line went quiet, then a sharp intake of breath. "What?" Evan pulled up the folder he compiled weeks ago. Screenshots, receipts, hotel charges, photos from Kendra's second Instagram account where she and Dimitri posed together, smiling in tropical resorts, kissing under neon lights. Her captions gushing about "my king." He sent them to Diane. There was a long pause. Then the faint sound of Diane's voice, sharp and angry. "Kendra Marie, get in here." Through the phone, Evan could hear muffled shouting, objects crashing, Kendra's shrill protests about privacy and overreacting. Diane's fury cut through it all. Finally, Diane came back on the line, her voice trembling with disbelief. "Evan, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. She told me you two were just having some rough patches. But 2 years? She's been bringing that man to family dinners. She said he was her personal trainer." Evan closed his eyes, leaning back in his chair. Thanksgiving. He remembered that Thanksgiving. The stranger at the table. The way Kendra had been oddly defensive about why he was there. It all clicked now. Diane's voice cracked. I made him extra pie." Evan didn't know what to say. "I'm sorry, Diane." "No, I'm sorry," she said firmly. "You didn't deserve this." Her voice hardened. "Thank God you didn't propose." Evan's gaze drifted toward the empty space on his dresser, where the ring box had sat only days before. "Yeah," he whispered, "thank God." But as he hung up, Evan knew this was only the beginning. Kendra wasn't done. Not even close. By late afternoon, Evan had convinced himself the storm was easing. The texts had slowed, Dimitri's crew had retreated, and even the echo of Diane's voice yelling at Kendra had quieted the anxiety buzzing in his chest. For the first time all day, he poured himself a glass of whiskey, sat on his worn leather couch, and let the burn settle into his bones. But peace, when Kendra was involved, never lasted long. At exactly 6:03 p.m., the pounding started. Sharp, insistent knocks against his door, followed by raised voices in the hallway. Evan set his glass down, pulse spiking. When he opened the door, he wasn't met with Kendra's tear-streaked face. Instead, 2 uniformed officers stood there, weary expressions already telling him they didn't want to be involved in this mess. "Sir," one said, his voice flat from too many shifts, "we've been informed you're holding Miss Hayes' belongings hostage." Evan blinked, then laughed bitterly. "Of course." The taller officer sighed. "May we come in?" "Sure," Evan said, stepping aside and gesturing toward the neatly stacked boxes lined against the wall. There were at least 10 of them, each labeled in black marker. Clothes, shoes, makeup, miscellaneous. On top sat a vision board, taped haphazardly with magazine clippings of wedding dresses, luxury vacations, and in bold cursive across the center, Mrs. Dmitri Volov. Evan couldn't help himself. He tilted his head at it, That one's my favorite. The officers glanced at each other, one raising an eyebrow before turning to Kendra, who was hovering in the hall. Her face was red from crying, but her eyes burned with righteous fury. "You see," she snapped, pointing at the boxes. "He has my things. And he stole my grandmother's necklace. He's hiding it." Evan folded his arms. "I'm allergic to nickel, Kendra. I've never touched your jewelry." "He's lying," she shrieked. "He stole it." Wordlessly, Evan pulled out his phone, scrolled, and handed it to the officers. On the screen were time-stamped photos of every packed box, neatly documented, including one where the necklace glittered on top of her jewelry bag. "Everything she owns is in these boxes," Evan said calmly. "She's welcome to check them." The older officer pinched the bridge of his nose. "Ma'am, you need to go through the boxes now. If the necklace is here, we're done." So she did. For 15 agonizing minutes, Kendra tore through her belongings in the hallway, clothes spilling out, heels clattering against the tile, makeup bottles rolling across the floor. She found the necklace exactly where the photos showed it had been. The officers looked exhausted. "Miss Hayes," the younger one said firmly, "if you contact us again with false allegations, you'll be charged with filing a false report. Do you understand?" Kendra's lip trembled. "But do you understand?" Her glare darted between Evan and the officers, her chest rising and falling with rapid, shallow breaths. Finally, she snapped the box lid closed and muttered, "Fine." She began stacking her things, her movements jerky, angry. As she loaded the last box into her arms, she paused in the doorway. Her eyes glistened, not with remorse, but with venom. "You know what, Evan? I was going to propose to you tonight." The older officer actually snorted, a laugh escaping before he could stop it. "Sure you were, ma'am. Sure you were." The door closed behind her, leaving the apartment heavy with silence. Evan leaned against the wall, running a hand over his face. The whiskey on the counter was still waiting, but the burn in his chest was stronger now. And it didn't end there. Later that week, the phone call came. Evan sat in his boss Jerome's office, blinds half closed against the setting sun. On speakerphone was Dimitri, his voice booming with false confidence. "This man is harassing my girlfriend and creating a hostile work environment. He needs to be fired immediately." Jerome, a sharp-eyed attorney-turned-executive, leaned back in his chair and mouthed, "Watch this." He muted the call and whispered, "Let's see how dumb he really is." Then he unmuted. "Sir," Jerome said smoothly, "how exactly is Mr. Patterson creating a hostile work environment when he doesn't work at your gym?" A pause. Then confusion. "He what?" "No, he works here." "With Kendra?" Jerome's lips twitched into a grin. "This is Technova Solutions, an IT firm. Kendra doesn't work here, and neither do you." His voice dropped, firm and cold. "What you are doing right now could be considered harassment. I suggest you stop." Click. The line went dead. Jerome turned to Evan, shaking his head with disbelief. "That your ex's boyfriend?" Apparently, he thought he was. Jerome chuckled darkly. "We're saving that recording, just in case." Evan exhaled, a weight lifting slightly. But he knew better than to relax. Kendra wasn't out of moves yet. That night, as he scrolled through his phone, he found her newest play. A long, dramatic essay splashed across Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. "My abusive ex trapped me financially, isolated me from my friends, and abandoned me when I finally found the courage to speak my truth." She tagged everyone they knew. She posted 3 teary-eyed TikToks about recognizing financial abuse. She even started a hashtag, #Evan is an abuser. Evan's blood ran cold. Lies could spread faster than truth. Reputations could crumble overnight. For a moment, fear clawed at him. But then the comments started rolling in. Marcus, his best friend, posted screenshots of Kendra's Venmo history. Thousands of dollars Evan had sent her for rent, car payments, groceries that were clearly spa visits and hotel stays. Jenna, who worked at the boutique hotel downtown, uploaded security footage of Kendra checking in with Dimitri during work hours. And the kill shot came from Trinity, Kendra's ex, best friend, who dropped texts where Kendra had bragged about Evan being her retirement plan and called him a starter husband, until Dimitri's gems took off. The internet turned on her. The TikToks vanished. The hashtag fizzled. But the damage was already done, just not to Evan. He should have felt relieved. Instead, he felt a growing unease. Because if history had taught him anything about Kendra, it was this. When her lies failed, she got dangerous. And that night, as banging rattled his door at 3 a.m., Evan realized the storm was far from over. The pounding at 3 a.m. rattled the walls like an earthquake. Evan shot upright in bed, heart racing. At first, he thought it was another nightmare. But then came the unmistakable sound of keys scraping against his lock, as if someone was desperately trying to force their way in. He grabbed the baseball bat propped against the dresser, a precaution he never thought he'd actually need. Quietly, he stepped into the living room, every muscle tense. And then, her voice. "Open the door, Evan. You can't do this to me." Kendra. Her shrieks echoed through the hallway, raw and unhinged. "You think you can leave me? After everything I gave you? I made you. You're nothing without me." Neighbors' doors cracked open, sleepy faces peeking out, whispers filling the hall. Phones were raised, recording. The very thing Kendra feared most, losing control of her image. She pounded harder, her fists slamming like gunfire. "Let me in. I know you're in there." Evan didn't move, didn't breathe. He'd already called 911 with shaking fingers, the dispatcher's calm voice promising units were on the way. But the minutes stretched endlessly, every second filled with Kendra's escalating hysteria. Then came the crash. A ceramic planter from the hallway, hurled at his door. Splinters of clay and soil scattered across the carpet. Inside, Evan whispered to himself, "Stay calm. Just stay calm." When the red and blue lights finally strobed across his blinds, relief washed over him like cool rain. Officers stormed up the stairs, pulling Kendra away from the door as she screamed and clawed at their arms. "You don't understand," she wailed. "He stole from me. He ruined my life. He's cheating on me." The irony nearly made Evan laugh, but his throat was too dry. She fought like a cornered animal, her hair wild, mascara streaked down her cheeks. But in the end, the cuffs clicked shut, and the hallway fell silent except for her ragged sobs. As they dragged her away, her eyes locked on Evan through the peephole. There was no remorse in them, only hatred. The following days were a blur. A restraining order was granted almost immediately. Kendra had made it easy for the judge by showing up drunk to the hearing, slurring accusations while Evan sat quietly with his lawyer. But the drama didn't end with her arrest. Dimitri, once her knight in shining gym shorts, suddenly went quiet. Kendra's calls went unanswered. Her posts shifted from rage-fueled rants about Evan to tear-streaked videos begging for Dimitri to please call me back. And then the truth hit the gossip circles like wildfire. Dimitri had been seeing another woman, one of his own gym clients. Younger, blonder, and, according to Instagram, already calling herself Mrs. V. Kendra's perfect backup plan had abandoned her. Evan watched from the sidelines, equal parts vindicated and horrified, as her world collapsed in real time. First came the eviction notices. Her landlord had grown tired of late payments and drama. Then the repo man, towing away the shiny SUV Evan, had helped her finance. Finally, the social circle she clung to began to vanish. Friends unfollowed, old allies blocked. Even her mother, sweet, patient Diane, cut contact after one too many screaming matches. One evening, Marcus sent Evan a link. A shaky phone video, filmed downtown. Kendra, stumbling barefoot in the street, screaming at Dimitri as he loaded bags into the trunk of another woman's car. "You promised me forever. You said I was the only one." Dimitri didn't even look at her. He closed the trunk, slid into the passenger seat, and drove away. Kendra collapsed on the curb, wailing. No one moved to help. And yet, despite everything, the betrayal, the chaos, the lies, Evan couldn't shake the heaviness in his chest. He had loved her once. The woman she'd become was unrecognizable. But somewhere in that wreckage was a person he had planned a future with. He sat alone in his apartment, staring at the ring box he'd never opened. Slowly, he slid it into a drawer, not as a symbol of regret, but as a reminder of what he'd survived, a reminder of how close he had come to losing himself. The storm had finally passed, but its shadow lingered. Months passed, seasons changed. The sharp winter winds gave way to the soft warmth of spring, and with it, a sense of renewal that Evan hadn't felt in years. His apartment, once haunted by memories of late-night arguments and Kendra's chaos, slowly transformed. The boxes that had lined the walls were gone. The chip dishes she had insisted on keeping were replaced with ones he chose himself. Simple, sturdy, his style. Plants filled the corners, bringing life back into a space that had once felt suffocating. More importantly, he felt alive again. For the first time in a long time, Evan woke up without a knot in his chest. He didn't dread the sound of his phone buzzing. He didn't flinch when someone knocked at his door. The silence, once oppressive, was now peaceful. He poured himself into his work, taking on new projects that challenged him, impressing his boss and colleagues. His friend Marcus dragged him out on weekend hikes, reminding him of the world beyond four walls and toxic arguments. Slowly, he reconnected with old friends Kendra had pushed away, laughing over beers and late-night diner runs, reclaiming pieces of himself he had forgotten. But healing wasn't linear. Some nights, he lay awake replaying everything. The anniversary dinner, the screaming, the humiliation, the betrayal. He questioned how he hadn't seen the signs earlier, how he had let himself fall so deep into her web. And yet, with every painful thought came a new realization. He hadn't just survived her, he had grown stronger because of it. One evening, he met Diane for coffee. Kendra's mother looked older, wearier, but there was kindness in her eyes. "I wanted to thank you," she said softly, "for showing me the truth. I didn't want to believe it, but you saved me from enabling her any longer." Evan nodded, unsure what to say. "She's not doing well," Diane admitted, her voice trembling. "She refuses to get help. She still blames everyone but herself. I pray she'll change, but—" Her words trailed off, heavy with doubt. Evan sipped his coffee, staring at the steam curling upward. "I hope she does, too," he said quietly. And he meant it, not for himself, not for reconciliation, but because he knew what happened if she didn't. They sat in silence for a while, both grieving in their own ways. The real closure came unexpectedly. On a warm June evening, Evan stood on his balcony watching the city lights flicker alive. In his hand, he held the velvet ring box. For months, it had sat in the back of his drawer, untouched. He opened it one last time. The diamond glimmered faintly, catching the glow of the streetlights. This ring had once symbolized forever. Now it was just a reminder, a lesson carved in stone and silver. With a steady breath, Evan closed the box and set it on the railing. Tomorrow, he would sell it, not to erase the past, but to fund his future. Because the truth was, he wasn't broken anymore. He was free. In the end, Kendra had lost everything, her reputation, her relationship, her safety net. Evan had lost her too, but what he gained was far more valuable. Clarity, strength, and the knowledge that love without respect isn't love at all. The scars remained, yes, but scars were proof of healing, proof that he had endured, survived, and moved forward. And as the night breeze carried the sounds of laughter from the street below, Evan smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. He was ready to live, to love again, but this time with eyes wide open. The storm had passed, and for the first time in years, the horizon looked clear.